Alright, y'all. So my name is Emily. I'm one of the TAs, so I'm going to be judging you guys today. So before we go ahead and get started, I'm going to ask you guys to let me know what your section number is and then what your name is. So I'm going to get started with affirmatives. If you don't know your section number, just tell me who your TA is and I know who it is.
We have Cassie.
You guys are Cassie? Okay, so you guys are 201. And who's going to be the constructive speaker for Cassie?
Is that the first?
The first.
Yep, that's me.
Okay, and what would your name be first?
Matthew Van Hoy.
Do you mind spelling your last name?
Yeah, it's V-A-N-H-O-Y.
Perfect, thank you, Matthew. And then second speaker for Cassie.
That's me, Kyle Galarowitz, Galarowicz.
Perfect, thank you, Kyle. And then summary?
Me, it's Will, and then Dearman, D-E-A-R-M-A.
And then who's doing the fourth one as well for you guys? Awesome. So you guys are Morgan's section. Yes. Perfect. Alright, so who's going to be the first speaker for this one?
It's like that.
Nelly?
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
With a Y first?
Well,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. And then what's your last name?
Gomez.
Gomez?
No. Sometimes
And
I
then second speaker for y'all?
Me, Noel
because my
Galingo.
family sometimes is
Do you mind spelling your last name for me?
but it's really
G-A-L-I-N.
I'm pretty sure all my classes.
Did you need me to spell mine? Or did you get?
I think I got it.
Okay.
This is Geo, easy.
Yeah, the first name though, right? You got it.
Yeah, at Y-A-N-E-L-I.
Yes. Oh, wow.
She never spells
I
it
got
right. Okay, who's the third? Okay, how?
Samantha.
Samantha?
And Castillo.
After his, I can go for here and then figure it out with it.
Someone in the last debate, that's what their last name was too. Castillo. Okay. So who is the fourth speaker?
I don't think you can,
Layla with an I.
but you can bring up.
Layla Wilson.
Or is that you?
I can bring
Alright, so I'm just going to give you guys a general overview kind of how everything's going to go down. So we're going to get started with affirmative, constructive, then you guys know how our props are and so on. So we'll let you know when you get to the 5 minutes or if you're under and so on. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So if you want to go ahead and get us started, Kyle, that would be awesome.
If by Kyle you mean Matthew, then I would-
If by Kyle I mean Will.
All right, thank you for gathering here today, everybody. In recent years, we have seen how gaps in business regulations can create large-scale environmental disasters, such as oil spills. We affirm that environmental health should come before economic growth. Big business practices are having a large negative impact on the environment. This issue will only continue to escalate should we not find other ways to power our corporations. NGOs like Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund believe that, or in the potential fragility of the environment, and they see the potential fragility of companies, brands as a means of pressuring them to change. The environment isn't the only thing at stake here. If companies gain reputation for performing poor environmental practices, it's proven that it will have a negative effect on their profits. The Earth system is in crisis. Summer after summer, unprecedented temperatures warm the seas, leading to ever stronger and more destructive winds that fuel raging forest fires and destroy lives. Fish stocks are collapsing, and plastics in the ocean are killing migratory birds. Industrial effluents leach into aquifers. 60% of primate species are heading towards extinction in this century. The negative effects of the practices of manufacturing and materials used for the products are insurmountably large. If we don't find a way to change these practices, we will surely not have a planet in which we're able to live, let alone one we can have a thriving business in. Now, contention 1, economic growth is currently destroying the environmental health. By continuing the current practices of manufacturing and materials, the state of our environments will continue to decline. First, the environment is a requirement for any form of life, period. So, the argument that economic growth is more important cannot be true. These practices that are taking place right now are destroying forests, causing wildlife to go extinct, and poisoning the oceans. Without those three things playing a role in the world, there will be no world. We cannot build a business in a world with no oxygen. We cannot improve our economy without food. These things are essential and are being diminished rapidly. By continuing what we are doing, we are signing a death sentence for not only the future of our economy, but every living creature. Second, environmental destruction is not the only thing at stake. If you are not worried about the state of the environment, and the jobs of those who are dependent on a healthy environment are at stake as well. Fishermen around the world are unable to make a living due to polluting of waters. These individuals now have to find alternative ways to provide. In some cases, these fishermen have turned to cleaning up the waters they once fished in and selling the materials they have found for a paycheck. The loss of these types of jobs will have a negative effect on economic growth in the long run. Contention 2, we need to find alternative ways to fuel our business and different materials to use in our products. The use of CO2 emitting materials such as coal needs to be discontinued. This will have a positive results in a few ways. First, there are other ways to power, such as renewable energy, that do not have the huge impact on the environment that our current methods do. These practices will help remove the damage that has been done to the environment and would work wonders on improving the state of the wildlife. Second, if we do not refrain from continuing to use these, the ozone layer will continue to be destroyed, causing continued increase in bad weather, hotter summers, and colder winters. Third, if we do use renewable energy, then the cost of producing energy could be much lower. If we are spending time, energy, and finances on technology that will provide renewable energy solutions, then the cost of running any type of manufacturing plants could see costs plummet. I blew through that, and that's all I have to say.
Awesome, thank you. So, Unelli, if you're ready, go ahead and get started.
Okay. Sorry, I'm ready. Do I have to stand up? I shouldn't have asked.
Well, they didn't stand up in the last one we were at, so we didn't know.
Yeah, that's what
Oh, I mean, and just your voice projects. It'll make you feel more confident.
I hope so. Alright, here we go. Alright, in order to improve as a whole, we need economic growth. There are many ways economic growth can improve the environment and the economy. Today, my team and I will expand on ways that favor economic growth and argue how economic growth should be valued more significant than environmental protection. I can assure you that after this debate, my team and I will cover the advantages of economic growth and provide significant examples as to how economic growth is crucial in times of conflict. Let's begin with the first contention, poverty. According to the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, 22,000 children die each day due to poverty, and they die quietly in some of the poorest villages on earth, far removed from the security and the conscience of the world. Quote, for the 1.9 billion children from the developing world, there are 640 million without adequate shelter, 400 million with no access to safe water, and 240 million with no access to health services, end quote. In conflict, we need to improve the lives of those in poverty before we support environmental protection. How can we improve the environment without helping those people that live in it first? With economic growth, it helps reduce poverty and improve the quality of life in developing countries and even our own. With increased GDP, we can generate many improvements such as better employment opportunities, advancement in human development, and new technology. Research that compares the experience in wide range of developing countries find constant strong evidence that rapid and sustained growth is the single most important way to reduce poverty. Roderick 2007 wrote that the typical estimate from these cross-country studies is that a 10% increase in a country's average income will reduce the poverty rate by between 20 and 30%. Our second contention is innovation. Innovation is a major factor in economic growth. Innovation represents a process, namely an activity of creating a new product or service, new technological process, new organization, or enhancement of existing product or service. There are a couple of innovations that have helped improve both the economy and the environment by windmills, solar panels, and technological advancements. Innovation not only makes products better quality and better services, but also creates sustainable growth and development for countries by bringing ideas to life. Our last contention is infrastructure. Infrastructure is an important aspect in economic growth. It enhances the efficiency of production, transportation, and also improves the GDP of a nation. With infrastructure, you can expand production, transfer goods, roads, power to enable easy transportation, As stated in the Congressional Research Service of Economic Impact of Infrastructure and Investment, infrastructure is understood to be a critical factor in health and wealth of a country, enabling private businesses and individuals to produce goods and services more efficiently. The real question we should be asking today is how do we best organize resources to create and sustain innovation, and moreover, how to leverage investment made in science and technology, research and development, and related capabilities with the ultimate goal of reaping rewards in terms of wealth creation and increase the standard of living.
Alright, thank you, Nellie. Now we're going to move into the crossfire. So anyone can speak in the crossfire, but you guys have 3 minutes to just ask each other questions.
What was y'all's contentions again?
All of them?
Yeah.
The three of them.
Yeah, three.
So the first one was that economic growth is currently destroying environmental health, and the second one is we need to find alternative ways to fuel our businesses and different materials to use in our products.
And how do you expect to find those resources to fuel that? We need economic growth to do anything. We need innovation
You're talking
and
like they're
infrastructure.
mutually exclusive. You can have economic growth and environmental protection at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
That's-
economic growth has to be like
The first-
the first option, because how are you going to fund all that you want, the renewable resources and stuff? You need people to pay that off.
How are you going to fund what you want if you can't even live in the space that you want?
That's
You know?
why
How do
let's
you
get to
live?
the timeline. We have a greater timeline before our climate has drastic changes, and within that 10-year timeline, we can make these economic changes that will better our environmental climate. So it's not like an issue of like we have no time, we have a time frame.
I agree that we have a time frame. I don't think that's the discussion at the moment. I think the problem is that if we don't change things, then inevitably it's going to have these destructive consequences.
But what about the children?
So if we, no, that is important.
Like, how would you want to create a better future for them or create a better
I
environment?
would say it's
or-
more important to have poor people than no people, is what I would say in the long run.
Yes. but-
So if we don't
So
change
you'd
things,
rather
I do
kill off
agree.
all these people and save all these animals instead, or?
No, save the people.
It's not even saving just the animals, it's saving
It's the environment in general.
Okay, so basically, yes, there's poor people, but if people are starving and they're hungry, then there'll still be no
I'm
people.
like, why are we
at the
They're
end
gonna
of
be
the day.
starving
Are we,
and
if we're not
hungry.
gonna,
Yes,
if we're not
but
gonna focus
there's
on
not a
real
good
world
GDP.
people problems such as like starvation and like real life issues. Like, why are we saving the environment if we don't care about saving people?
I think
Because saving the environment is saving people. Just because you have a high
I just
GDP.
said that we'd rather have poor people than no people, but poor people,
No,
they
it's
can't
just
afford,
like-
That's the majority of it.
they can't afford food, they, like, resources, they're gonna die, I mean, there's really not.
Even if a country has high GDP, it doesn't mean that the poor is still better.
But it does create
If we're gonna-
opportunities.
There are
Right.
statistics that help and that show that GDP positively improves quality of life through institutions for both poor worlds and first worlds. So that's just sort of a global like reference.
No, absolutely. I don't think that there's any question that economic growth is important.
Then
That's not what we're arguing.
This isn't
We're
a
arguing
big-
it's not as important as the environmental health. Because of the environmental health, because we need GDP, we need a
So how are
healthy
you
economy.
how are you
But if
gonna-
we've got, for instance, windmills and things like that,
Yeah,
it's a
but how are you
natural
going to
source
get that
of energy.
environmental help?
Yeah,
to
what are the
improve?
solutions
What are the
of
solutions
for
to
the
improve
To
it?
change the way that we're fueling things, not as
So where are you
much
going to
oil.
get
Yeah.
that money?
The material, how
Yeah.
do you get the materials to make that stuff or to
It's
improve
gonna-
the world?
I agree, but I
It's
just.
like that.
All right, y'all. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the affirmative rebuttal.
Is that the same speech?
Second.
You ready? Sooner or later, we'll have to recognize that the Earth has rights too, to live without pollution. What mankind must know is that human beings cannot live without Mother Earth, but the planet can live without humans. It is because we agree with Bolivian President Evo Morales in this statement and wish to secure a healthy planet for the future of all, including poor people and children, that we affirm, when in conflict, environmental protection should be valued as more significant than economic growth when in conflict. I'll be expanding upon Matthew's points of discussion, first of which is that large-scale corporations play a large part in the declining health of the environment due to harmful manufacturing practices and unclean material harvesting, as well as an inability to adapt to cleaner energy sources that will positively affect the environment and economic growth. Secondly, the continued use of CO2 emitting resources will have negative repercussions on the climate, such as increasing the deadliness and severity of natural disasters, which in turn leads to more lives lost as well as massive property damage. As I said before, harmful manufacturing processes and material harvesting negatively impacts the environment. One way that it does is that the burning of coal, gas, and oil releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which the USA confirms. Global emissions from all human activities will reach an all-time record high, 45 billion tons in 2017, end quote. This is important because CO2 controls the planet's temperature. The more CO2 in the atmosphere, the hotter the overall temperature is, as confirmed by NASA in 2011. Scientists have found that carbon dioxide is a gas that sets the temperature. Carbon dioxide controls the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere and thus the size of the greenhouse effect. The higher atmospheric temperatures impact the planet by melting the polar ice caps and causing the sea levels to rise, which results in coastal landscapes being lost to the sea. And that not only endangers local wildlife, but also causes loss of livelihood and property damage to humans. This statement is further proven by the Oregon State University. Quote, if humans continue to burn fossil fuels so that temperatures meet the 2 degrees Celsius threshold outlined in the Paris Agreement, global mean sea level rise may exceed 9 meters or nearly 30 feet, end quote. Since the coastal areas of the United States are the major economic producers of the country's GDP, the rise in the seawaters will harm economic growth majorly for those coastal cities, in addition to the environment. Next, I will discuss how adapting and implementing cleaner renewable energy sources will not only protect the environment, but stimulate economic growth as well. Renewable energy sources such as solar panels, hydroelectric energy, and wind turbines are great for the environment because they don't leave a carbon footprint. Renewable energy is also becoming more efficient and cheaper than natural gas, as investment into renewable energy providers allows them to spend more and bring more demand for jobs in those areas. There will be a need for people to help maintain and repair all of these turbines and solar panels, which will help stimulate growth in the economy, while also helping to protect the environment by eliminating more CO2 emissions. Speaking of increased jobs, the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, stated in their annual employment review in 2017, quote, IRENA finds that renewable energy employed 9.8 million people around the world in 2016, a 1.1 increase over 2015. And in 2017, IRENA also stated that jobs in the sector, including hydropower, increased 5.3% from 2016 for a total of 10.3 million people employed worldwide. Compare this to how natural gas can cost jobs and livelihoods in addition to harming wildlife. The BP oil disaster cost the Gulf of Mexico's commercial fishing industry $94.7 million to 1.6 billion, rough estimate, and anywhere from 740 to 9,315 jobs in the first 8 months, according to a new study by the U.S. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. Renewable energy has nowhere near the effects that crude oil does during an accident, and doesn't have prolonging negative effects for decades on the environment like the BP oil spill.
Okay.
Am I good? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good to start whenever you're ready.
Environmental protection and economic growth carry positive relationship and can advance at the same time. We we contend that both environmental protection and economic growth are important for global development, but the negative side argues that in times of conflict, economic growth should be valued more significantly to stable the economy and improve quality of life for all before EP policies are implemented through public institutions. Economic growth is needed to lay financial and practical groundwork before EP policies are implemented through these institutions, so that these policies to save the environment are more likely to succeed instead of collapsing when the economy collapses. Economic growth generates necessary funds and workforce that sets up vital institutions like agriculture, medicine, health, transportation, power, and other services. These services are so vital to most nations across the board, first world countries and first world countries, and will better the lives of all people. Without first valuing economic growth, public institutions would not be able to set a supportive stage for environmental policies. To have a healthy, sustainable planet to better all, we need to lean into technological development that comes from economic growth. More efficient and advanced technology requires building new capital and equipment that incorporates new technology. The positive side claims that new resources of power is needed to save the environment. We already have new alternative fuel sources, such as windmills, solar panels, and other alternative examples. However, we are not going to build an institution from the ground to implement these new alternative sources. They're going to have to be rebuilt by the workforce and that the institutions we already have set up. So first world countries with competitive GDPs in general have more innovative systems that lead to installing improved technologies in agriculture, industries, sanitation, and education, and in all walks of life, which was a quote from IESA 2008. Quote from IESA 2008, developing countries desire to make rapid progress in technology as they catch up with present-day developed countries. This leads back to that we already have a solution for alternative fuels, and the solution involves using economic growth to implement them for all. Second, a country's increased GDP positively relates to pollution's improved health. In order to have a workforce to carry out these new environmental policies, healthcare and health systems require public spending as well as individual spending to provide life-saving services. Third world countries that experience poverty suffer the most from infant malnourishment and mortality, and drastically lowers life expectancy. Quote, economic evidence confirms that 10% improvement in life expectancy at birth is associated with a rise in economic growth of some 0.3 to 0.4 percentage points per year by Frank 2004. And third, the positive claims that large corporations are not properly regulated to protect the environment. That doesn't have to do with the claim that economic growth inherently is going to destroy the environment. It's the opposite. Economic growth and big corporations, although can be combative to the environment, are also currently part of the solution to environmental problems. For example, the innovation and infrastructure that comes from economic developments, such as GMOs, crop GMOs, genetically modified crops, came from economic growth, and is the solution to the fact that as of 2012, 1 billion people around the world are starving. This statistics comes from the United Nations UNCTAD that says 115 million of these starving people are starving due to both a global food crisis and economic recessions. These two factors are the dominating contributors to the food crisis that spike up and further divide the distribution of food amongst third and first world countries. Countries most affected by increased food prices and starvation include Bangladesh, China, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Countries under protracted crisis or consistently experiencing natural disasters or social conflict
crossfire, so whoever wants to start with the question. Y'all got it.
You know, I like, I agree with you that, economic growth and environmental protection can be in hand. Oh, I just want to say that.
Oh, and I was about to go ahead and
The-
You were stating before, we don't need humans. We don't need people. We don't live in a world without humans.
I never said that. I
No,
said
I
that.
mean,
I said that
so
Earth can live
did you
without
state
humans.
that? Like something about humans, like we can live in a
No.
world without
I,
humans.
no, I said
Like,
human beings cannot live without Mother Earth, but the planet
Okay.
can live without humans.
Sorry, I heard wrong. I'm sorry.
That's all.
And so, my thing is like, my question would be like, so like if we're not really like having this good economy, if we're not really like focusing on economic growth as the first thing, like every action has a reaction. So like poor people, people who are hungry, people who are starving, like take example for Venezuela, the crisis that's there. People are going to react, they're going to get violent. The economy and the economic growth is not good there. And look how people are, they're starving, they're hungry, they're killing each other. Like how are we gonna have a good, like if we have a good environmental protection, I do agree, it's needed because we need to live. But we need to focus on economic growth. So if we do have environmental protection, but our people are killing each other and stuff, that's still an issue that needs to be fixed at the same time.
That's a political issue more than an
Well, I don't know.
economic or environmental issue.
Economic growth, we need to have a good economic growth to fund things.
We do, but the energy sources like solar panels and the winter ones are getting more cheaper and affordable to set up, and they're also cleaner. In case, like, say if hail damages solar panels, that's a bad example. Like nothing can compare to like the BP oil spill, like where
Well,
that
like, with
fishermen
that-
have lost like tons of jobs. That.
I have a question. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Who cleaned up BP? I thought they hired companies. to
Yeah,
clean
BP
it up.
did
So
help clean it up.
therefore, I'm saying that they hired companies and therefore economic growth stimulated the solution to like BP, which helps like in time.
But it's still
The business
negative.
created the problem in that situation.
Well, let's talk about natural disasters because, that happens naturally.
Accidents are always
Yeah,
gonna
so
happen.
how are we supposed to protect the people that happen to be in those natural disasters? How are we supposed to build like a building for them to be able to hide out or, camp out or be safe?
The infrastructure that comes from economic growth is a solution that can be more preventive of loss of life during natural disasters. But
And also with economic growth,
Yeah.
we can fund these natural disasters. So we can provide waters and like blankets and stuff, but
I believe that back to the timeline of the 10 years, like what you're saying is important, but it's also, since we're dealing with such a short amount of time before it's irreversible damage to the earth, we need to focus on the environmental protection over economic growth.
Awesome. So now we're going to move on to our third speaker. Affirmative, so just whenever you're ready.
Y'all can say something.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
With temperature records being smashed month after month, year after year, it's likely that human-caused global warming is making extreme heat events more frequent, end quote. As stated by the Environmental Defense Fund. We also agree that with the introduction of climate change, the typical storms we see are getting much more intense and dangerous, causing catastrophic damage to structures and property across the U.S. and the world. We affirm that when in conflict, environmental protection should be valued over economic growth. For our final point, we'll be focusing on how storms are intensifying and destroying much of the property we as humans have worked so hard to build. Many people believe that climate change only means that the earth is warming when it actually means that it's just a general shift in the entire climate. This is why we are seeing a big increase in the amount of winter storms and how much snow they drop throughout the storm. According to the Environmental Defense Fund, once again, quote, a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, so when the temperatures are below freezing, snowfall can break records, end quote. This is why winter storms such as Winter Storm Juno in 2015 are breaking records and causing massive property damage. In New England Today's article, they state, quote, the local police chief told the Boston Globe that it was the worst storm he had seen in 10 years on the island. Inland, Worcester saw record-breaking 34.5 inches of snow, making Juneau the city's largest snowstorm on record, end quote. Being only 4 short years ago, it's clear that our change in climate is causing massive snowstorms never before seen in these areas. Next, I would like to reiterate the points of my peers to show, in order to further our points on protecting the environment. As Kyle and Matthew discussed, many aspects of life as we know it would not have to change. Simply changing the way we extract our energy would be a huge factor in slowing down and even reversing climate change. There are many renewable and clean resources available, such as hydroelectric, solar, and wind power, which cause absolutely no pollution while making enough power for our needs. The NRDC stated in 2016 that, quote, in fact, the investment from Lazard estimates that the cost of generating electricity from wind and solar has declined by 58% and 78% respectively since 2009, end quote. These are huge economic strides in the push for renewable energy for our planet. In 2007, the U.S. switched from burning coal to burning gas. This is a step towards reducing emissions, as gas emits half as much carbon dioxide as coal did. In Carbon Brief's article, they state, quote, gas emits roughly half the carbon dioxide that coal did when it's burned to produce power. So if gas being used instead of coal, that would lead to lower emissions. If we assume a straight swap, that would mean that 217,075 million kilowatt hours of coal power was replaced by gas power. We could work out the emission savings accordingly, end quote. The reduced emissions from energy production by 50% since 2007. If we could make this switch again only to renewable resources, we could potentially wipe the energy industry of emissions. I have discussed how storms are intensifying and how much carbon dioxide emissions have been eliminated, and also how another switch could stop emissions completely. If we do not get a handle on climate change right now, we will have no earth left to build on because it will all be gone. Economic growth is dependent on having a place to make the economic growth, and without the earth, we will have no place left to live. If we were to change our ways of producing energy, our life as we know it would not have to change. We would still be using the same amount of energy, just the way we harvest it would change. Once again, we affirm that when in conflict, environmental protection should be valued over economic growth.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So, I'm gonna go over what to make it, but also the key word out of all of this is when in conflict. That's our key word out of this whole debate, is when in conflict. Environmental growth is significantly more important than environmental protection. So, we're not stating that one is more than the other, it's just significantly. So, basically, according to economics help, money can be spent on protecting the environment. With higher GDP, gross domestic product, a society can devote more resources on promoting recycling and the use of renewable resources. This means that if GDP is low, it will be hard to fund and get the basic needs in order to have environmental protection to happen. Without economic growth, environmental protection cannot happen. First, poverty is a big issue, not only in the United States, but in other parts of the world also. The Department for International Development states, but under different conditions, similar rates of growth can have very different effects on poverty. The employment prospect of the poor and bordering indication of human development, the extent to which reduces poverty depends on the degree to which the poor participate in the growth process and share in its proceeds. Thus, both the pace and the pattern of growth matter in reducing poverty. This includes policies to make labor markets work better, remove gender inequalities, and increase financial inclusion. In addition, with higher outputs and positive economic growth, firms tend to employ more workers, creating more employment for these poor people, which allows the poor to get more jobs, which will reduce our poverty rate. The economic growth will have the more ability we have to create jobs for our society, and the employment rate will increase in our community. Second was our innovation. The role of innovation has been critical to economic growth as the nation has evolved over decades. There is a clear statistic link between innovation and gains and standard of living, and this is stated by Cohen 2011, which we need innovation to improve our technology and medical advancements. Medical advancements such as new medicine, which needs a good economic growth in order to find cures to illnesses such as cancer, HIV, AIDS, and other uncurable diseases. The importance of economic growth in all of this is we need a good GDP in order to fund these workforces and keep these institutions running, such as institutions that protect the environment also. Third, infrastructure. Infrastructure services such as energy, transportation, telecommunications, provisions of water, sanitation, and safe disposal of waste are fundamental to all kinds of household activities and economic production. This is stated by Palooza 2015. We need infrastructure because it creates benefits for a large number of people. Public infrastructure is one example, such as stated before, transportation, water, sanitation, and safe disposal. Even though environmental protection can still help in these areas, the problem is without focusing on economic growth first, we cannot be able to improve our roads for safer driving, energy to have this electricity, and sanitation to make sure waste and bacteria is not getting into our country and causing people to get sick. These institutions keep our workforce healthy, and without a healthy workforce, there is no support to carry out environmental protection. However, economic help is depending on the nature of economic growth. For example, if all contribute to make economic growth great, and the environmental protection can also benefit from it. It all just depends how we are as a nation to make economic growth happen and be a way for everyone to win. We need economic growth to lower our national debt also, which can lower governmental borrowing. We can profit to step up to communities such as CPS, kids in foster care, donations to donate to those economic things that you want, wildlife, make life better, healthy, sustainable life, and immigration, etc. We know as a country for common knowledge, we are $1 trillion in debt, which takes our stuff, we have to pay that off as a country. We have taxes taken out of our paychecks. So without a good GDP, like stated before, we can't lower the economic borrowing, which we still need to fund renewable resources to help us sustain a better quality of life. Economic growth needs to happen first and be our main focus in order to help our community as a whole, not only in environmental protection, but in other areas that are issues in our country. Like immigration, they're always getting displaced and moved out, which makes it hard for them to sustain day-to-day life and living and keep a job. Economic growth can help in these areas, such as I stated, CPS, better the wildlife, better the air in our world. We need funding, and we need to maintain. We can maintain these organizations, institutions through economic growth, a strong GDP, high, and we can tax high corporations to maintain all these things.
Or the fourth speaker. Matt, if you want to go ahead and close this out.
Okay, so today we have spoken on how economic growth is killing the environment by continuing the current practices of manufacturing materials. The state of the environment will continue to decline. We have spoken on the need to find alternative ways to fuel our businesses and different materials to use in our products due to the use of CO2 emitting materials, such as coal, needing to be discontinued so the environment is not continuing to affect negatively. The burning of coal, gas, and oil releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which USA Today confirms global emissions from all human activities will reach an all-time record 45 billion tons in 2017. We spoke on the change, or we spoke on how changing our energy sources will have improvements on the environment. Renewable energy sources such as solar panels, hydraulic energy, and wind turbines are great for the environment because they don't leave a carbon footprint. Renewable energy is also becoming more efficient and cheaper than natural gas as an investment into renewable energy providers allows them to spread more and brings more demand for jobs in those areas. We covered how storms are intensifying across the U.S. and the world. The reason for this is because of the climate change heating parts of the earth. In hotter climates, as was stated before, more moisture is retained in the clouds, therefore causing more precipitation. If we do not begin to tackle climate change head on, these storms will lead to more and greater property damage than they have already, and as well as many more record-breaking storms, similar or worse than the ones that we have experienced in recent history. Again, these issues that environmental protection will diminish jobs is not true. There will be a need for people to help maintain and repair all of these turbines and solar panels, which will help stimulate growth in the economy while also helping to protect the environment by eliminating more CO2 emissions. This is a time-sensitive issue, which is why we believe that focusing on protecting the environment is more important than economic growth, because if we do not focus on that now, then we will not have an environment to build an economy around in the near future.
All right, Layla, whenever you're ready. Okay. 1 second. You're good.
Okay. As you all know, my name is Layla Wilson, and I want to begin by saying thank you to everyone who came and supported the debate, and also thank you to our opponents for preparing a great case for us to debate. With that being said, I'm going to state why we, the negative side, should win today's debate. We discussed our first contention, which discusses poverty and the impact it has on our children. We provided statistics on how it continuously affected these children and how the rate is slowly increasing. The fact of the matter, as we stated in our first speech, is how do we improve the quality of life without helping those who live in it. We also related how economic growth reduces the poverty rate while also improving the quality of life in developing countries as well as our own. We discussed the statistics concerning the increase of the GDP. We then move on to our second contention relating to innovation. We begin by defining the term and stating how it is a major factor when considering economic growth. We provide examples of major innovations that had a big part in helping our environment, such as windmills, solar panels, and etc. As we already discussed, innovations we feel like bring ideas to life. And our third and final contention we discussed is infrastructure. As stated before, it enhances the efficiency of production, transportation, while also improving the GDP of our nation. While we believe that both are important, when in conflict, we feel that economic growth provides institutions that can solve and prevent environmental issues like disasters and food storage. And then while we believe that some believe that drastically changing the way we structure our economic systems, that we will in turn produce a better economy while helping the environment. We don't believe that we have all the answers to the perfect economy, but what we're doing in the U.S. With continued growth and innovations, setting us up for greater success. To summarize, the overall significance of economic growth, we need to continue the use of every bit of our sources to help better generate and increase capital gains for our economy. With us doing that, we will be able to create new technology for refining Earth's fossil fuels. We will be able to find new ways to better grow GMOs and better support our agriculture system. And then we believe that to conclude, we believe that you can have economic growth without environmental protection, but you cannot have environmental protection without economic growth.
Really good job, guys. Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves for just a minute or so, and I'll get back to you.
Sounds good. Good games.
I thought there were crossfire. I know.
Yeah, there's only two.
Yeah, I
Forgot about that too.
cars.
Will you turn?
We all have gas cars.
All right, so you guys all killed it. I wish you all could win, but since this is a debate, I'm going to go ahead and give it to the negative.
They didn't find out they won yet.
yeah, you guys found out. But they'll find out some other time. Y'all just got lucky.
Your name's Matt?
Yeah.
Dude, your fit is on point.
Yeah, my girlfriend's a seamstress, so she works
Where?
at all my suits. She just does it solo.
What are you here in Denver?
We live in North Richland Hills.
Oh, I'm from Richland.
Are you really? Yeah, she's great.
I went to Carolina.
Did you? Yeah, I grew up in
Oh, yeah? Where do you stay?
Kansas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was definitely not this good when I bought it. Definitely not.
That's why you need to see.
Absolutely did. Yeah, she. Yeah. So it's like I just got a new suit and the pants fit really well, but the jacket was not. She's just a guest.
Yeah. If you're if I was reading your address.
So, what do you mean by that?
Someone's gonna stand up. Keller High?
It is.
Nice. Same here. You guys do it.
2015.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I'm old.
my brother graduated.
Thank y'all.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so
I was
here's
like, I'd be crying. I'm graduating 2020.
Who?
So now do we just go back into the big room and watch someone? There's actually not.
Oh, I didn't know the golf course very much. I know Matt Paulson.
Hey, Emily,
He might know.
that's great. Right, okay.
It's in
We go back to the big room and watch the debate, right?
Okay, so there's like 4 rooms stalled out.
Uh-huh.
See into most of them, so you can kind of see. You can go in and
Okay.
do you want a little?
No, I
Was a quarterback
Then I had to see you knock somebody out.
No stress.
Yeah, this is my boyfriend. So
I was like, I'm Karen, I'm not getting away, so whatever.
I was just trying to get the energy out. You guys had
observing.
hey, we're in the same boat.
Y'all won.
No, it wasn't. All 3 of them were shaky.
This is
I was
great.
shaking.
I watched all of them.
I watched it.
I feel like it belly
For y'all to
You get a
Yeah.
No, the keyword wouldn't be cool.
You're so quiet stuff. She was like,
Oh.
is that your poster for me?
So y'all girls
Oh my god, y'all.
Founded a brewery in Cisco.
No way.
She was like, well, this is not what we need.
Oh,
So you still have each other.
We're gonna keep the energy going.
Let's do it.
okay.
And
Happy birthday.
Oh, I have a question for you. Is Coach Debate still there?
Oh, which one?
The big
I love Coach.
Bro, oh my gosh, I was in debate. I was in debate. He was my debate coach.
Oh,
And my wrestling coach. And my jiu-jitsu coach. I love him so much.
Coach Debate was actually invited to
Was
I don't think we ever got his address to send it. No, is he? You have to be